At first glance, this looks like a simple MrBeast challenge built around one giant promise. Last to leave the circle wins $500,000, and that number is exactly what grabs your attention. But once you look past the headline, the real story becomes much bigger. What seems like a basic game of endurance is actually a large-scale entertainment production built around one of the smartest ideas on YouTube. A concept so simple that anyone can understand it instantly, but so expandable that it can keep millions of viewers watching all the way through. The setup is almost unbelievably easy to explain. 100 contestants stand inside a giant painted circle. If they touch or step over the line, they are eliminated. The last person remaining has a chance to win an enormous cash prize. That clarity is part of the genius. There are no confusing rules, no slow introduction, and no need for complicated explanation. The audience understands the stakes within seconds. And because the concept is so clean, viewers immediately begin imagining themselves inside the challenge. They do not just watch the game, they mentally play it. They start asking themselves what they would do after a few hours, after one night, after several days, and whether they would hold on or give in when the pressure starts building. What makes the video especially effective is that the challenge does not stay visually or emotionally flat. On the surface, it begins as people standing in a circle on grass. But over time, the circle becomes less of a line on the ground and more of a psychological arena. The pressure increases day by day, fatigue builds. Temptations appear, the rules stay simple, but the experience becomes harder. That is where the format becomes incredibly strong. Each new day introduces a fresh layer of discomfort, uncertainty, or temptation, which means the audience keeps getting new reasons to stay invested. The contestants also play a major role in why the concept works. A group of 100 people is large enough to feel massive on camera, but still manageable enough for the production to capture reactions, rivalries, and small personal moments. If there were only a handful of people, the challenge might feel too small. If there were too many, it could become visually messy and emotionally distant. But at this size, it feels big, readable, and dramatic. The participants appear relatable, which matters, because these kinds of videos are strongest when the audience can imagine themselves in the frame. The money becomes the star, and the contestants become a mirror for the viewer. As the challenge continues, the environment evolves. Contestants begin adapting in ways that make the video more visually interesting, more emotionally engaging. Blankets, pillows, makeshift resting spots, and improvised comfort all become part of the story. Then more elements are added: props, mini-games, side prizes, physical distractions, and moments designed to create mistakes. That progression is important because it stops the challenge from becoming repetitive. Instead of watching the same situation for 17 minutes, the audience feels like they are watching a challenge that keeps transforming. The circle may be simple, but everything around it turns the idea into a moving system of pressure, temptation, and decision-making. This is also where a lot of viewers may underestimate the scale of what they are actually watching. The video feels spontaneous, but a production like this would almost certainly require much more coordination than the frame suggests. Even without knowing the exact internal structure, it is reasonable to assume that a challenge of this size would involve a serious team behind the scenes. Multiple camera operators would likely be needed to track 100 contestants across a large outdoor space. Producers or coordinators would need to monitor eliminations, prize moments, continuity, and rule enforcement. Crew members would likely be responsible for props, resets, logistics, site support, batteries, media handling, and overnight needs. And because the challenge appears to continue across multiple days, the operation would probably need planning well beyond what a casual viewer might imagine. Post-production is another huge part of why the final video feels so clean and engaging. A long multi-day challenge does not automatically become a tight, fast, emotionally effective piece of content. That only happens through editing, pacing, and story design. The final upload feels smooth because the boring parts have been removed, the strongest moments have been highlighted, and the escalation has been carefully shaped. That kind of storytelling is invisible when it works well, but it is a major reason the video feels exciting from beginning to end. What the audience sees as a simple challenge is, in many ways, the result of careful structure and selective storytelling. Then there's the business side of the idea, and this is where the title becomes especially smart. Last to Leave Circle Wins $500,000 is one of those titles that works immediately. It is short, direct, and easy to understand. It does not waste time. It tells you the premise and the stakes in one line, but the brilliance is that the title highlights only the prize, while the real scale of the production likely goes far beyond that number. The $500,000 reward is the emotional hook, but it may only represent one part of the total cost needed to create the full spectacle. If we look at the challenge from a commentary perspective, the set itself is probably more expensive than it first appears, even though the visual centerpiece is only a painted circle on grass. The actual environment would likely require a controlled location. Setup time, access for crew and vehicles, space for staging, storage, contestant support, and room for cameras and equipment. As the challenge continues, and the circle changes over time, the production would also need repeated resets, maintenance, and support for the visual design. On top of that, there are props, challenge items, visible structures, sound support, and nighttime considerations. So while the set looks simple, it likely functions as a controlled event space rather than just an empty field. Production costs are where the numbers could rise very quickly. Even if it still carries real operating costs because it must be transported, maintained, used by skilled crew, powered, monitored, and backed up. A challenge of this scale would also likely involve significant labor, camera teams, production staff, support crew, runners, coordinators, security, and post-production editors all contribute to the final result. None of that is free, simply because it stays off camera. In many ways, the invisible parts of a video like this are what make the visible parts feel effortless. Participant logistics are another overlooked piece of the puzzle. Managing a large group of contestants likely involves communication, paperwork, scheduling, arrivals, check-in support, and contingency planning. Depending on the production setup, there may also be accommodation, transportation, or other participant-related expenses. Even if the audience never sees those costs directly, they are part of what makes a challenge like this possible at all. A video with 100 people is not just a creative idea, it is also an organizational challenge. Daily operations may be one of the quietest but most expensive categories. When a challenge lasts for many days, the production is no longer just filming a bit. It is effectively running a temporary live environment. People need food, water, sanitation, charging, cleanup, site maintenance, overnight support, and general problem solving. These expenses may not be exciting, but they add up fast. The longer the challenge lasts, the more the production shifts from simple filming into full operational management. Of course, the prize money itself remains the emotional center of the video. $500,000 is such a large amount that it instantly raises the perceived importance of every decision. Even a small mistake feels painful when that much money is on the line. But the grand prize is not the only financial element shaping the experience. Side rewards, surprise giveaways, cash offers, and large temptations all help create drama throughout the challenge. From a commentary standpoint, these extras are not just gifts, they are storytelling tools. Every side prize changes behavior, every offer introduces pressure. Every temptation becomes a device for creating suspense. And that leads to the most interesting conclusion. The $500,000 in the title may be the most visible number, but it may not represent the full scale of the production at all. Based on the size, duration, logistics, and visible giveaways, it is reasonable to say that the total cost of producing a challenge like this could be significantly higher than the headline prize. Exact internal numbers are not publicly confirmed in full detail, so any breakdown should be treated as informed estimation rather than fact. But from a production analysis point of view, this likely goes well beyond simply handing one person a cash reward. What makes the video even smarter is that it does not fully resolve itself in a single upload. Instead of delivering a clean ending right away, the story expands into a second part that changes everything. Suddenly, this is not just one successful challenge video. It becomes a two-part event. The original concept continues beyond the first upload, which extends viewer interest, increases return traffic, and turns one premise into a larger content arc. That is not just creative storytelling. It is a very smart audience retention strategy. In the end, that is what makes this video so impressive. It looks simple, but it is built on layers of production, psychology, pacing, and business strategy. It is a game show, an endurance challenge, a social experiment, and a retention machine all at once. The circle may be the most obvious object in the frame, but it is probably the least important part of the bigger system. The real power of the video comes from everything built around that circle: the structure, the pressure, the temptations, the storytelling, and the scale. So the real takeaway is this: Last to Leave Circle Wins $500,000 is not just a challenge video about standing inside a painted line. It is a carefully engineered entertainment product built around one irresistible question: how long would you last? It is easy to understand, difficult to ignore, and strong enough to turn a basic shape on the ground into one of the most memorable large-scale challenge formats on YouTube.